We're on board with these officers from South East London as they prepare to rendezvous with the team from the Met's flying squad. Their target, an organised crime group suspected of involvement in a series of violent robberies. The gang's believed to have struck mobile phone shops in more than a dozen different locations, stuffing holdalls full of high-value smartphones in each raid. This is Rare Access. The flying squad is the Met's elite robbery and kidnap unit, dealing with some of the country's most hardened criminals.
Please open the door, it's going in!
Inside are the two suspects they're looking for.
We'll come down and speak to him just 2 seconds, alright? You're under arrest for these mobile phone shops between March and June 2025.
As a drug sniffer dog arrives to help search the property, other officers find what they think is a small packet of drugs thrown from a bedroom window.
It's quite cocaine.
Well, it's just after 6 a.m. and the two suspects at this address have had a rather rude awakening. Raids are also happening at another dozen addresses around this area.
Unarmed assets driving around trying to help over.
The UK's major cities have seen an epidemic of phone thefts. In London alone, 80,000 smartphones were stolen last year. Half of all street robberies are linked to mobile phones, netting the thieves up to £400 for each device. Now, organised crime groups, like the one targeted by the flying squad, are stealing in bulk and making huge profits. These are expensive pieces of equipment they're stealing.
Absolutely. One iPhone can cost in the region of £1,200. In some incidents, have stolen up to 72 handsets at a time. So it's really, really lucrative.
So we're talking £100,000 a raid?
Yes, absolutely.
Police!
A major drive by the Metropolitan Police has seen a 15% drop in phone thefts this year. The Scotland Yard commander, tasked with reducing phone robberies, believes the phone companies can also help in that effort.
About 3/4 of those phones that leave the UK connect to networks and cloud services overseas. So essentially they're being reused as a second-hand phone in a foreign market. We think that phone companies could work more closely together to block access to cloud services for those devices. So that phone is still a phone in that foreign country, but it can't connect to cloud services and therefore can't operate as a smartphone.
The smarter and more expensive the device, the more attractive they become to the criminals trying to cash in on this highly lucrative trade. But today at least, the flying squad believe they've dealt a major blow to one organised crime group in the battle against the phone thieves. Mark White, GB News, South East London. Commander Conway, tell us about mobile phone related crime. It's a big problem around the world because it's a valuable commodity, but in London in particular?
It's been a big challenge for us over the last couple of years, you're right. And as you note there, not just for London, for the major European cities in particular, Madrid, Paris, Barcelona, also fairly significant problems. And you're right to characterise it as a commodity, because I think these days a stolen mobile phone should be seen in very much the same way that a firearm or controlled drugs or even humans who are trafficked are. This is organised criminal networks acquiring the phones at scale in places like London, packaging them up, exporting and selling into foreign markets, again at large volumes, driven by a criminal economy and a demand in the developing world, China and North Africa, for second-hand iPhones and other types of smartphones. And it's very much organised criminality servicing that need, which is driving the crimes on our streets, but also the harm that we're seeing here in London. So theft and robbery are significant challenges in their own right, but around 60 to 70% of our knife crime comes from our robbery problems. So this is not just around the loss of a phone and important information and data, serious though that is, but this is also driving some of our knife crime and violence challenges here in London.
So effectively what you've got, and which is why the flying squad which is the elite robbery and kidnap unit, are involved in this, because it is a high sort of turnover in terms of the robbery that's being committed here. They're taking them, stealing them, dozens at a time. I mean, that is clearly must be very worrying for the mobile phone sector in these shops up and down the country.
It's a challenge for members of the public, and it's a worry for them, and it's a worry for the mobile phone sellers and retailers as well. You're right. To put this in context, we had about 80,000 phones stolen through theft or robbery and other types of acquisition in London last year in 2024, and that was up from about 65,000 a year before. But we are having a dent, we are having an impact. It's not just for the flying squad, this is the whole Met out there, from neighbourhood teams and local officers, proactive teams operating across the boroughs of London, and at the top end, the flying squad and other specialist assets operating against the most dangerous and the most sophisticated organised criminals in that network. We're seeing reductions, so 14% or so reductions in both robbery and theft in the first 3 months of this year. We want to go further. The problem is still too great and the level of offending too high. We want to reduce that further, but we can't do this alone. Policing can't simply just arrest a way out of this problem, no matter how effective that disruption has been. And that's why we've been working really closely with government to manage and control and target the export of stolen phones, and also critically with some of the phone companies and elements of the tech sector who we think could work with us to reduce the ability.
Tell us what you think the phone companies can actually do in particular that could really help make a dent on this problem.
So the vast majority of phones stolen in London are exported to foreign markets. So all but about 22% leave the UK and go to export. About 3/4 of those phones that leave the UK connect to networks and cloud services overseas. So essentially they're being reused as a second-hand phone in a foreign market. We think that phone companies could work more closely together to block access to cloud services for those devices. So that phone is still a phone in that foreign country, but it can't connect to cloud services and therefore can't operate as a smartphone. Essentially becomes a dumb phone, a Nokia 6210 or an old-style device that can make a phone call but can't connect to cloud services. We'd also like phone companies to activate an ability to display the IMEI number, that's the specific identification number for that handset, so that if we find large batches of phones, which we do when we target the handlers or catch them as they're exporting out of the UK, that we can swiftly identify who the original loser and therefore the theft of that phone relates to. But crucially, it's severing that link of that device being able to connect to cloud services. It makes redundant that item as a commodity of any value to be sold overseas.
But it would be fair to say that there is a bit of resistance from the phone companies. They have concerns about potentially going that far.
They do, and we're working effectively and closely with them and with good support from government on this. And we have to accept I'm not a technologist. This is our sense of what an appropriate measure would be to reduce this theft problem. If the phone companies can find alternative measures to deliver the same impact, we're really, really open to hearing about that. But the fact remains, the protective measures that the companies have in place at the moment are not having that desired effect. If 3/4 of the devices that are exported, and that's from a sample size of around 4,000 phones that we worked through in some detail, if 3/4 of those are still connecting to services overseas, then the existing technology isn't having an effect in blocking those phones, which is why we'd like the phone companies to go further. We suggest severing that link to cloud services. If there's another alternative that their phone companies can produce, we'd be very welcome to that and keen to explore it.
And really at the end of the day, you need that help from the likes of the phone companies, because it is a massive problem, not just in London, as we've said, in other European cities as well, urban centres of population. And how, just explain to the audience how this particular crime is linked actually to more violent crime, to robberies, to knife crime and the like.
Yes, so the acquisition of those phones, 80,000 phones which are stolen, predominantly come from either being pickpocketed out of people's possession or people being robbed. And we see we put a lot of effort into targeting young individuals who are using high-powered e-bikes to commit strings of robberies through central London. It's been extremely effective. We've got officers on bikes themselves now chasing after, as we speak now, people will be out there in the streets of London chasing down robbers on those bikes. But also organised criminals who will use threats of violence and sometimes violence themselves to rob stores, clear out stock rooms of mobile phone stores, and indeed some of the violence we've seen against courier companies and those involved in transporting and delivering those phones to individuals. So there's a whole backdrop of violence associated with the theft of mobile phones, and also beyond that, fraud, where those who are stealing the phones or those in the countries those phones are being exported to are then accessing those phones. If people have weak security on their apps or within the device themselves, then they're able to access apps and banking apps and so forth, and we're seeing sort of secondary fraud happening as a consequence of that. So really important for the public who can also help us. Please activate as much of your phone device security as you can, particularly the anti-theft settings that already exist on some of these on some of the devices, and just be aware of your surroundings when you're taking a mobile phone out to make a call, and be aware of anyone seeking to observe over your shoulder PIN numbers and codes and so forth. And thirdly, please make sure that the individual applications, particularly any relating to the banking facilities, have additional passwords and strong passwords to protect them.